insights from your experience. Welcome and thank you so much for coming. It's lovely having you. Over to you.
Hello everyone, good morning. Thank you for coming this early in the morning. It was a challenge for me to wake up early. So my name is Kanehira Mitani, and I come here regularly actually. I've been coming here since 2009. I've always been working kind of like behind the scenes. So I used to be doing the audio video in the second and the third floor for a while. And right now I'm doing the translations for the Japanese people who come here so that they can understand what's going on. So I usually hide in the very back because I am working on the phone while Pastor Johan's talking, and it doesn't look good, so I would rather stay in the back and be discreet rather than that. I am an aspiring filmmaker, and I just started my career 3 years ago, basically. But I had the privilege to work on Silence, which was my first film to be working on, and that was back in 2015, early 2015. How it happened was I used to study in LA for a little bit to study filmmaking, and my classmate just happened to be involved in the movie while it was getting made, trying to get made a couple of years before that. And they had a shortage of Japanese-speaking, bilingual production crew. And so I got a Facebook message from her saying, hey, I'm working on this film Silence. It's about to shoot in a month, but we need help, and are you willing to do it, and are you down? At that time I was looking for jobs and all that, so the answer was pretty straightforward. And I feel that it was an incredible privilege, and also just you can feel his plan working on me, basically, being the first film being of that subject matter about Christianity in Japan and done by this very well-known filmmaker, and being in that world was a very incredible experience. It wasn't all easy, I have to be honest, but it was still very eye-opening, and also at the same time it was almost like a familiar to me as well. Whereas whether this path of making films or working in entertainment would be my passion, my path or not, or it also made me reflect about my faith as well. As I think if we have seen the movie or if we have read the book, it gives that impression too as well. Watching the movie, I had two thoughts basically about this whole experience and about the movie itself and what we might glean from what the film was about. The first thing is how unique a country Japan is, and how different challenges we might have in terms of being Christian and also trying to spread the word of the Lord. I think the word religion itself is kind of like it's a very intentional term, especially in Japan. It's the word shukyo, basically. But the moment you even mention that word or you mention that thought, people just shut down, and people just don't want to talk about it, or they just stop thinking about it, or they just don't want to continue the conversation. As they say, when you're at a bar or when you're drinking, don't talk about politics and religion. And religion is the second one, right? But I think it's more just about a way of living rather than what the doctrine is, or what's right or what's not, or what accusing other people. That's really not the point. Like, you're in this denomination, you're in that denomination. That's not really the point for me, at least. But the challenge in Japan is that, as you might have seen in the movie, that we have this main protagonist called Rodriguez. He goes to Japan to find his mentor, who he heard has abandoned his faith, and he lands in Japan. But he realizes that there are these unique ways Christianity is conducted in each village in Japan. For example, the first place where he lands, we have different people who are assigned different roles, and that's not really defined by anyone, but it just spontaneously happens. Like, some people, there's this character called Ji-sama who says can do baptisms but cannot do confessions, for example. Like, those things just naturally, spontaneously happen, as opposed to being So I think there is a very broad sense of accepting an idea or a thought or a belief or a culture and developing it or making it into one's own is kind of like what happens a lot in Japan, is what my impression is. Not only just in faith, but also in technology or in communications or in even filmmaking. There's a unique Japanese way which is efficient and, you know, makes sense for the Japanese people, but might not necessarily be the same as when it originally came. So the whole concept of Christianity coming into Japan and it changing its form slightly, little by little, over time was a very significant point that I found from the conversations Rodriguez had with his mentor, for example, and that was a significant thing in my opinion. Another point is my personal, you know, reflections about religion and how I reflect on how I live, basically. As you say, like, the word religion is very difficult to use in Japan, and you see, for example, like people in the streets saying, you know, holding these like black cards with yellow fonts saying, you know, you gotta repent and you gotta, you know, and Jesus Christ will save you, and that's all correct, but the presentation, I feel, is a little very, very strongly pushy, which might not necessarily be the best way to approach the Japanese people's mentality. So that was a kind of thing that I reflected on myself, and me being not that strongly evangelistic, to be honest, made me think that I myself might be one of those hidden Christians, so to speak, like practicing the faith, but not necessarily spreading the word as I feel I should be doing, for example. So in that sense, the film gave me that reflection as well, and was a very significant experience, to say the very least. And yeah, I believe many of you have seen the film, maybe read the book, or maybe haven't seen it yet, but I think either way, this film, Silence, the story itself is a very important one to experience, maybe once, maybe not twice, because it's very heavy. So I hope you have an opportunity to watch and see it and read it, maybe, and see what you might think or what stuff you might glean from. I would like to open the place up for questions. I'm actually surprised that there's so many people here. I'm sure each person must have had their own personal experience or either thoughts or questions about the story or the subject matter, or even just the process of making the film. Like, how come we have these people like actually being hit by water with all these waves? How does that work? Like, even those technical things, I think I can answer. So if there's any questions or any opinions or thoughts or anything, please let me know, and I'll do my best to answer.
Any questions? I've got a mic.
Why was it filmed in Taiwan and not Kyushu?
Right. So the question is, why was it filmed in Taiwan and not in Japan? Yes, that is a very valid question, a very good question as well. Ultimately, the decision came down to budget reasons. So filming in Japan ended up being too expensive to make the film, and given the subject matter and how much box office it might make, blah blah blah, they considered that it might be too expensive to shoot in Japan. Whereas in Taiwan, they had very, very similar landscapes, first of all, and also very financially feasible range of just costs, and also very good crew, and also the environment, where they're very flexible about, for example, building sets in natural locations, all that kind of stuff. So in Japan, it was a little bit trickier to do that. So the decision ended up being doing it in Taiwan. Although Taiwan is very close to where Kyushu is, so in terms of what kind of landscape there is or what kind of trees are growing or all that, it was fairly similar. So I think you might have witnessed the landscapes, and I've been to Nagasaki actually last year in December, but it's pretty much very, very similar to what it was in Taiwan. So in terms of that, that's how it happened.
Thank you very much. I was really impressed by the Japanese cast and the delegates where they portrayed the characters, Mokichi or Kichijiro or Inoue. And can you explain a little bit how they studied the period and how they studied the script? Because it must have been a very difficult process for them.
Yes, I think the casting was crucial in terms of making this film, and I believe that we got the perfect mix of people to play each role. Each role has its unique requirements, and I think that, of course, not only the acting abilities, but also the personalities and the people who they were reflected on the role, which added to the reality of the experience. Personally, yes, so Mokichi was definitely a very, very important choice. He's the noble Christian who sacrifices himself to follow through his faith. Well, first of all, everybody had to go through like a lot of weight gain first, so weight loss. So it was like a huge, that was very, very rough. So the people who had to starve were actually starved. So, for example, like the main two priests, they're already, very lean figures to start with, but they had to lose an additional, like maybe 25 or maybe, like Adam Driver, like the bigger person, said he lost 51 pounds. The last 1 pound is important because, that's his commitment to the role. But basically, that was a huge physical requirement as well, because you can't have like a chubby person, for example, being in a poor village, that would lose the reality of the story. So that was, first of all, a very big thing. And even throughout the shoot, people would gradually have to get thinner, because in the different stages of the story, you experience different kinds of toughnesses. So everybody was hungry all the time, like all the time. I had to see people live on energy bars, or they would have one banana for a snack, or they would have this special smoothie that they would drink like every once in a couple hours, and it was very, very strict in terms of diet. But I think that was one significant thing that contributed to the reality of the film. In terms of character study, I think each person did their own prep very, very thoroughly. I heard that the role who played Inoue, so Issei Ogata, he was reading up on a lot of German philosophy when he was, in Taiwan, when he was not acting. Basically, he would be reading on like Hegel and all kind of that philosophy to see that his point was the bad character isn't necessarily only evil, but it's a mixture of his own sense of what is right and what is wrong. And it's a combination of that, and it's not just simply like, oh, this guy's good or this guy's bad. So in terms of his performances, he had that in mind all the time. And it was very, very inspiring to see an artist prepare for that kind of role, reading and working on his behavior and being spontaneous in the moment. Like, that was incredible in terms of each person's performance. So, yes? Okay.
Yeah, I look for symbolism all the time when I watch movies. I repeat, I watch it several times to find symbolism, because the word silence at the end was supposed to communicate that even in the absence of words, even in the absence of a priest, with silence there was still conversion. In fact, it was sad that they didn't end it informing the movie viewers that there were some 150,000 Christians who survived or were found when Japan opened up. So the conversion is on the last part was the wife. I'm assuming that the wife was converted when she dropped the cross in the hands of the father. Now the father that they were looking for, I couldn't find the symbolism that he was never really converted. Am I supposed to believe that he was already converted? Because that was the only way they were supposed to conquer the priest. So was he really converted to be anti-Christian? Because when they looked through all the belongings, they found Christian symbolisms. In fact, there's a theory that one of the emperor was actually Christian. That's why he converted all the Canon Sama holding the Three Trinity, committing his spirit to the belief of the Three Trinity. So my question is, was there any part in the movie that was supposed to show us that the father they were looking for, was never really converted, or was he really converted? Because that's what disturbed me throughout the movie.
Yes, so it's the most important part of the film. Spoiler if anyone hasn't seen it yet. But in the original book, there's this section about the life after Rodriguez had apostatized. And in that it says that he keeps writing these promises that he won't believe in Christianity again, which means, and he's done that multiple times. So you see him writing something. We might not know what that is, but it's supposed to be an oath of apostatization, and which suggests that he has reconverted. So like he dropped it once, and then he picked it up again, and that's found by the authorities, and then he has to drop it again. He has to write an oath again. So that process has been in work all the time. It is definitely, you could definitely argue that you feel that Rodriguez might have stayed Christian all the time, and it doesn't really come off that he had actually apostatized. But in terms of the intent of the story, like when we see that we see the symbol at the very, very end, that he actually wasn't completely abandoning Christianity at all, which gives us a sense of hope in the world of despair. So I guess that was kind of what I thought was the intention of how he crafted the story, how the director crafted the story in that way. So definitely you could see it that way, but in terms of the story, he definitely did have moments that he dropped faith completely and tried to live on that. So yeah, it's definitely a matter of how you interpret it, and any kind of interpretation is possible. Yes. Oh, thanks.
My name is Hisashi. I saw the film in Tokyo some weeks ago, and after that I tried to see what's behind it. And I read Endo's recent book called Jinsei of Neo, or Stepping on Pictures in Life. And I also checked out the latest book, Silence, in which Martin Scorsese mentions echoes what echoes Endo's in regarding the purpose, one of his major themes of the movie. And now you mentioned 2 points. That is what you think as unique in Japan, Japanese uniqueness in culture, and also the word religion or shuto being avoided in our daily conversations among people. But I think those uniqueness is shared, but at the same time, one of these major things, according to Endo in his book, in writing the novel, is the focus on the perspectives of women, those who were weak in faith and sad, and those who were seen by the church and the society as there's some people who were dirty. But those are the same things. Ones that Endo thinks that that God is with them, with those people that were there. And Martin also writes in the foreword of this book that he mentions we need to focus on the figure of Christ, not just the figure of Christ, but the figure of Judas as well. So I think that you mentioned something about uniqueness, but there is also something in common among humans who are weak. What do you say to that?
Okay, that was a very, very good question, I think. Yes, who do we relate to over the course of the film is an important question to think about. So if we, so first of all, how many of us have seen the movie? Could you raise your hands? Okay. Who empathized the most with Rodriguez, the main character, the main priest? Okay. Who related with Kichijiro, the weak person? Right, so we have, definitely, right. So we have a larger number of hands who relate to Kichijiro, which means definitely that the point is, so where are we in this picture? Like, who are we in this picture? And most of us who live a life of faith have the same sense of, being imposed a fumie, like in every moment of our lives, basically. There's pretty much a temptation, a challenge, some of which we overcome, some of which we just succumb to, and it happens that way. But I think Endo's perspective is definitely more towards empathizing with the weak, which is definitely an important point. And the way, how would we react to the reality, which was reality once, when we were imposed to abandon something that is our life, or that makes ourselves, or that makes us identify, with, like, if we were imposed with that threat to abandon, what would we do, is the ultimate question for each and all of us, I think, in all of our lives. So thinking about that, I think definitely everybody, it would be very difficult to say, yes, I can die for my faith, because that's a noble thing, but not everybody can be that way, which is at this point, in which I understand and I agree with as well. So I think if we get to see that and reflect on our weakness and see how we can be stronger in faith, or how we see that we're not necessarily alone in that sense, then I think that movie watching experience, the reading experience as well, will be validated and will be something that will last throughout our lives. So yeah, definitely, that's an important. Yes.
Thank you. Speaking of things that are uniquely Japanese within this film, but also within the whole story, was I found that in Japanese, not only in this film or story, but in many films and many traditional stories like theater plays, there's always this conflict of outside and inside of what you display to the public and what is actually going on inside you emotionally, or what you truly believe in. So I found that it's very interesting that Christianity, in this case, is another kind of way of portraying this kind of eternal conflict within Japanese society and culture. So I didn't find it so much unique in that sense, but I was rather surprised that this Western-made film felt very much like a Japanese film. Perhaps it was because the book was Japanese and written by a Japanese author, but the way it was filmed and presented, it was not orientalizing very much. I felt it was made by some Japanese filmmaker, good old Japanese filmmaker. And so I was wondering, like, perhaps that's one of the roles you played, but how much was the production team or Scorsese aware of these of Japanese culture, or this because it's quite a deep thing, and not everybody understands that or can portray it in that certain way. So I'm wondering how much cultural exchange or research what was the awareness among the production team? And what role did you play in that?
Thank you. That's, again, an amazing question. So, yes, the Japanese elements have definitely been portrayed, or, the people who made it try to, put as much effort to make it authentic and real and to be, correct to the era. As happens in often in Western movies, the depiction of Oriental things might look a little bit different, or there might be different cast members cast for different roles that are supposed to be of a different ethnicity. Like, that thing always happens, and it's starting to change, but we're still at the very beginning of that change. In terms of silence, it was a very unique production crew. So, how unique it was. So we have the director, Martin Scorsese. He's American, devout Christian, and he has his key people. So the camera person, the main art person, the editor, the producer, the main assistant director, they all come from Scorsese's background. So they worked with Scorsese before, and they worked again on this one as well. And because they shot in Taiwan, we have a Taiwanese crew as well. So the Taiwanese crew was the crew mostly from Life of Pi. There's this movie called Life of Pi from 2012 that was shot in Taiwan, and it had a big Taiwanese crew. But that was one reason Scorsese decided to come to Taiwan, was through Ann Lee's recommendation of some sort. And actually the pool that they used for the sea in Life of Pi, it's basically about a boy who's stranded in the sea in a boat with a lion on his own. Okay, what to do? But the pool that was shot in was actually the same place where they shot the torturing of the 3 people at the crosses. So it's the same location. Yes. So it was actually a pool. They didn't shoot in the water, obviously, hopefully, because for safety issues, of course. But they shot in the pool, for example, to do like all the water stuff and all that. So back to the point, basically we had an American crew, a Taiwanese crew, and also a Japanese crew. So the Japanese crew was actually very, very small in number, but they would come in to basically oversee, to make sure that the art direction is right, or the size of things are correct, or that there are proper flowers in proper places, and make sure that things are not inconsistent, basically. A lot of research was put into this film. So we had 2 dedicated researchers, one researcher from the US, one from Japan, and they would talk all the time about all these different little details. You might not know, but for example, when it says samurai in the script,